Hey guys, welcome to the Daily Review. This is Nathan Tusi with Winner's Edge Trading. I just want to go over some of the news first of all and then get into the analysis, kind of what to expect over the next few weeks, what I've been looking at, hopefully give you some good information and something that will be really helpful to your trading. First of all, if you've been following along kind of with the current events, you know that tomorrow is going to be a huge news day. There's some pound news in the morning, but the main thing is the FOMC statements for the United States dollar. So that's going to be a huge announcement, a lot of stuff going on there. Tony wrote an article about that today, which I will link to below this video, so make sure you check that out. He gives you some good information to pay attention to in there as well. So that should be in the front of your mind as you trade tomorrow. And I want to make sure that you're aware of that. Again, make sure you read that article because that'll provide you with some information. We're going to go to the analysis here. First, let me show you this disclaimer. This is for legal purposes. You have to see this. Basically, it says that this is for educational purposes. We're not telling you to risk your own money. Anything that you do is, your own responsibility. Blah blah blah. You can read that there. That is, to take the liability off us because we're trying to help you, look at the markets in a better way, and we have to, follow the rules that our government has put in place in order to do that. So that's what this disclaimer says. You can, pause this video and make sure that you can read that full thing, and that you know what the purpose of this daily review is. Alright, let's get into the analysis. Okay, I'd like to start off with the odd dollar because on Friday's daily review I talked about the Australian dollar and the great opportunity we had for a long position based on the technical analysis, the huge support level here, the bounce, the follow through, the trend break, all the things that kind of added up for good long momentum. And I pointed out that this bar was a great continuation bar. So I just want to point out that it is continuing. I made a long here. This is just a demo account that I use for the daily review because I like the charting software. So I'm just using a demo account here. But I made a long to demonstrate the trade, and you see that it's up about 141 pips. And I'm going to stop up to break even on my demo. But just a good momentum, and we're looking for follow through here. So I wanted to point that out. And then I wanted to move on to the euro dollar because the euro dollar is doing an interesting thing. It seems that it's that after this break, the weekly has begun to round. And one thing I pointed out in Friday's review also is that just because the euro is starting to round up doesn't mean that this is a long-term trend reversal. Because if you look at the weekly, we're still in significant downward momentum from May or so of last year. So if you look farther, it's you can see more of a sideways market, but over the past year, it's relatively bearish. So I don't want you to freak out and think that the trend is reversing and there's tons of euro strength momentum building, because when you look at things in perspective, there's a lot less euro strength than you might realize. Okay, let's look on the daily chart. I'm going to go through the daily chart from here on out, and we'll see that euro daily bar has been pretty significant. Yesterday's bar was a tail, looked like a pretty good short opportunity actually, but today kind of motored pretty bullish throughout the day. You see here that we didn't quite get to our tail from the previous high of yesterday. Here's the tail, obviously, not quite there. So we could definitely see a reversal back to the downside based on the incompletion of this bar. But there is still about an hour left in today's bar, so you can't be sure about how this is going to close. Either way, you're looking at this level, which corresponds, and also this level, so it's kind of all near this range. And my advice would be to go ahead and wait and see how this closes, and make a decision based on whether you see follow through or perhaps a reversal. I think that a good short opportunity will present itself. And come back to test these lows, but again, the news and things like that are going to play a huge part in that. So make sure, of course, that you're following along with that and that you keep that in the front of your mind as you trade. Okay. Next, we'll look at the pound dollar, and if you're watching the pound dollar today, you know that it also had a pretty bullish day. Again, this was a major pop out of a huge support level. You can see that I have the whole support zone kind of highlighted here. and it goes back quite a ways, as you can see. But there's a major pop out of the support zone, and it's trying to follow through. There's definitely been some bearish bars in the mix that are kind of fighting it. But unlike the euro, the pound actually did touch a new high since the rally here. So a little more bullish momentum for the pound than the dollar, certainly, as we see here. And once again, as I'll keep reminding you, the news tomorrow and the volatility in the market will play a huge part as to whether these trends are, reversed back to trend continuation, or reversals continue to rally. Whatever is going to happen is probably going to owe a lot of its movement to the news and the volatility created by that during the day tomorrow. So again, just make sure that you keep that in mind. But one thing to note is that the pound dollar is showing a little more momentum than the euro dollar, and that's not surprising considering the strength that the pound has shown over the euro over the past month. When we look at US yen, it's an interesting chart because US yen is certainly in a downtrend. You can see that since the highs up here, it's been relatively consistent in its downtrend, but certainly was broken by the bullish rally that we see here. Now it looks like yen is gaining some strength and the US dollar is falling, but it's almost riding on top of this trend line now. So one thing to look for would be a break back down into the previous trend line. That to me would be a pretty high probability setup for short continuation, because this trend line has shown such authority since these highs. So that would be a very good thing to look for. We'll see if today's bar is followed through because it's been pretty weak. Perhaps we'll get a better signal tomorrow. But anything that breaks down into this trend line again would be a pretty consistent signal considering what it's done so far. So this could be just kind of a fake out, getting out above here, and just actually be ready to continue this downtrend the way it has since the middle of March or around this time. Okay. Odd US dollar is the one that we looked at before on the weekly chart, but we'll zoom to the daily chart, and you can see the daily rally has been very significant. We struggled at this price for a bit of time, but once we broke through there, which is again where I took the signal because of the break of these tails, we see a very nice four bar rally. One thing to note is that you have to watch for pairs to get overextended in a certain direction. But if you look at the down rally, we're not quite to that extent yet. So this certainly could have a lot more left in it. The only way to really judge is to pay attention and keep your stop relatively tight, and just make sure that you're managing the trade very closely. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the USD CAD. This is another one where we saw some topping action, and you see that this is pretty consistent with the other levels. Obviously not the same exact level, but once price gets up in this 105, 106 area, it tends to be too high for the USD CAD as of late, and looks to turn around. Again, the level that we anticipate the CAD getting back to is this major channel level where we had all this chop. I've mentioned several times that this seems to be kind of a magnet for price around this parity level. So price, as far as expectancy is concerned, would be expected to head back down into this level. Today's bar was a great bearish continuation bar. It broke right through the bottom of this tail and these two tails, which were somewhat of a base. So we had a break of that level, and it looks to be headed downward with a decent amount of momentum. And again, I like to talk about momentum because I think that momentum is very critical in the market. Momentum is something that you always want to be on the side of. You don't want to be fighting momentum. You want to be jumping on board with the momentum. So we like to see momentum bars because we want to be able to get on board with the momentum. And Casey took a very nice USD CAD trade, and I had like a 20 pip stop, and I think he's up about 75 pips on the trade. So he risked a very small amount, but has captured 75 pips thus far and is looking to make a few hundred pip trade total. So he's risked 1%, and he's up like 4% on the trade now. He's looking for a 10 to 15% trade while just risking 1%, and that's the the beauty of your trade opportunities when you have tight stops and you can hit these daily or weekly signals. Speaking of which, we're doing a webinar soon, actually tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m. we're going to have a webinar that talks about using those small risk parameters to target bigger daily or weekly gains. So I'll also put a link below the video for that. Make sure that you register for that webinar. Get in there for that because it's going to be really good information, really good education. Me and Casey are going to kind of tag team that webinar and talk about how we've been able to use smaller stops and still target those bigger gains. So make sure that you attend that webinar. Again, I'll have a link for that below. All right, euro pound. I mentioned that pound has been much stronger than the euro over the past. Whoops, back there. Over the past month or so, or over actually the past 3 months or so. But euro is rallying. We see that it's trying to maintain some kind of upward movement here, and this has been since the since the middle of May. So this has been actually about a month of slightly upward channeling. You can see that it hasn't actually gained much in the area of upward movement total, but it is trying to maintain some kind of fight in the bullish direction. And we actually have right now a pretty good bounce off the bottom of this trend line. So there's some euro momentum trying to build here, perhaps able to bounce to the top of the channel, and we will find out if it's continued to maintain that kind of movement. All right, the pound yen has been just really lazy over the past week or so. You can see here that it hasn't really made up any ground. And for pound yen, especially after recent moves have included some pretty big drops, you'd expect some more volatility, some more movement out of the pound. But again, it's been just pretty lazy lately. So because of that, I'm not really interested in making any pound yen trades. However, if it does make some break to the upside, especially, then I think that would be a pretty golden opportunity to jump on a pound long. And the reason is because you can see that the pound yen, the normal prices are a bit higher for the pound yen. If I scroll all the way back, you can see that when it gets this low, it doesn't tend to stay this low. And so that's pretty simple logic for trading, but oftentimes the simplicity is the best way to make your decisions. So if pound yen does show some bullish momentum, it would be probably a pretty high probability setup to look for it to get back up into the 130s. All right, so keep an eye on that. Again, I wouldn't recommend trading now, which is kind of the laziness of the movement. But a good probability will be that it will end up back in those 130s sooner than later. Okay, EuroCAD is right up against our trend line that we've been pointing out. And remember, it is tightening up against this support level that we drew, and you can see that here's the level. And so it is tightening up against this trend line on the top here. So make sure that you keep your eye on that tomorrow. With all the news and things coming out, this trend line will either probably break it back to the downside or be broken to the upside tomorrow. So make sure that you watch the charts tomorrow to see what happens with this trend line. I think it's going to be a critical zone for the EuroCAD. I'll probably be making a trade decision based on the EuroCAD with this trend line in the very near future. If it breaks and retests this, I think that it could be a longer term buy, and if it is rejected and breaks this bottom level, I think it would be a great short opportunity. So make sure that you're watching those levels. Okay, and the last thing I want to show, which I always show last, is the pound New Zealand, because we have continued the bearish momentum. As I said, we're looking for the break of this base in order to ensure that we think this bearish momentum is continuing, and I would certainly say that it has. So probably a pretty good opportunity to jump on the wagon now. Obviously, it's already moved a significant amount of pips, and you're a little late to the party. But still, with the amount of movement it has left in it, obviously able to target all the way back down into the 185 area, it still has a lot of room left. So it did break these levels. It looks to be still strong in the bearish direction, and I would say that there's some pretty good probability that it will head that way over the next few weeks or few months even. All right, so that is my analysis for today. I hope that was helpful. Hope it gave you some things to look at and some zones to pay attention to. And as always, please leave any comments or questions or thoughts below the video, and I'll talk to you soon.